After France surrendered to Nazi Germany in June 1940, Winston Churchill faced a major dilemma. The French fleet, one of the largest in the world, was still intact. Britain feared that if Germany seized these ships, it would tip the balance of naval power into Hitler's favour. Churchill couldn't risk letting that happen, so on the 3rd of July, he ordered Operation Catapult, a surprise attack on the French fleet at a naval base in Algeria. The British gave the French an ultimatum: join the Royal Navy, sail to a neutral port, scuttle the ships, or be destroyed. The French refused, and the British opened fire, sinking one battleship and crippling 5 others, and killing nearly 1,300 French sailors. It was one of Churchill's most controversial decisions, but he saw it necessary to protect Britain from a potential German naval threat. The attack damaged relations with Vichy France, but it also proved that Britain was willing to fight on, no matter what the cost. In the 1930s, as Adolf Hitler rose to power, the Nazi Party needed uniforms for its elite parliamentary group, the SS, an organisation tasked with enforcing Nazi policies, including terror and control. Hitler turned to a loyal Nazi Party supporter, Hugo Boss. Hugo Boss was eager to help, and his company quickly became the key supplier, producing the infamous black SS uniforms, as well as outfits for the Wehrmacht and the Hitler Youth. But behind the polished image was a dark truth. His factory used forced labour, including prisoners of war and civilians from occupied countries, to meet wartime demand. After the war, Hugo Boss faced fines for his support of the Nazi regime. But as his brand later rose to global fashion fame, the truth about its past just couldn't stay hidden. In May of 1940, French reconnaissance spotted something that could have ended the war before it even began. French reconnaissance units identified a buildup of German forces in the Ardennes, a region thought impassable for large-scale armoured divisions due to its dense forests and rugged terrain. This traffic developed into a 250-kilometre-long vehicle chain, and French reconnaissance aircraft reported the massive traffic jam to French High Command. However, General Maurice Gamelin and other high-ranking officers dismissed this intelligence, insisting that the Ardennes was too impenetrable for tanks. They remained convinced that the main German assault would come through Belgium, focusing their defences on the Maginot Line and northern Belgium, while leaving the Ardennes poorly guarded. The German forces exploited this oversight, advancing rapidly through the Ardennes, encircling the Allied forces in Belgium and cutting off critical lines of communication and retreat. Had these warnings been taken seriously, every Allied bomber could have been sent to the Ardennes, stopping the Blitzkrieg before it even began. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. The Germans were caught off guard, and part of the reason for their slow response was Adolf Hitler's sleeping habits. Hitler was known for staying up late, often until 3 or 4 am, and he expected not to be disturbed while sleeping. On the morning of D-Day, the German High Command was hesitant to wake him. Crucially, Hitler had direct control over Germany's elite panzer divisions, which were stationed in reserve. Field commanders needed his authorization to deploy them, but since he was asleep, no one dared to wake him up. By the time Hitler finally received word and gave the order, it was already too late. The Allies had secured their beachheads at Normandy, and the Germans lost the opportunity to push them back into the sea. His rigid command structure and late sleeping habits contributed to one of the most crucial German failures of the war. Along the western border of Germany, stretching over 390 miles, lies one of the most extensive and complex defence systems ever built. First planned in 1936 as part of Adolf Hitler's long-term strategy to secure Germany's western flank while focusing his ambitions on the east, its construction began in 1938. It involved over 280,000 workers building more than 18,000 bunkers, pillboxes and rows of concrete dragon's teeth designed to stop tanks. It was designed to break up advancing troops, with tank traps forcing vehicles into narrow gaps laced with mines. These gaps funneled soldiers into carefully planned kill zones, where they became easy targets for machine guns and artillery. The layout disrupted cohesion, leaving Allied forces vulnerable and exposed, and for years it stood as a symbol of Germany's defensive might, until the Allies faced it head-on in 1944. This massive barrier. In 1937, architect Martin Bormann began an ambitious project high on the Obersalzberg in the Bavarian Alps. His goal was to complete a lavish mountaintop retreat in time for Hitler's 50th birthday in 1939. Built at an elevation of 6,000 feet, the Eagle's Nest was intended as a symbol of Nazi power and a venue for high-level meetings. The construction, completed in just 13 months, cost 30 million Reichsmarks, equivalent to $247 million today. It included a 6.5 kilometre mountain road, multiple tunnels, and a custom elevator that was carved into the rock. Inside, the retreat featured luxurious details, including a red marble fireplace gifted by Benito Mussolini. Contrary to popular belief, Hitler didn't live at the Eagle's Nest. In fact, he only visited it twice, as he disliked heights and the thin mountain air. His primary residence on the Upper Salzburg was the Berghof, located much lower on the mountainside. Today, the Eagle's Nest serves as a restaurant and a tourist destination, allowing visitors to reflect on its history and take in the breathtaking views. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, better known as D-Day, to invade German-occupied France. But the night before, another operation was underway, Operation Titanic. This four-stage scheme aimed to confuse and mislead the Germans, and one of its key tactics was the use of paradummies, dummy paratroopers dropped off over Normandy. Around 400 paradummies were released by Allied aircraft in various drop zones, designed to look like real soldiers from a distance. The German forces, tricked into thinking that these were actual paratroopers, rushed to intercept them. The idea was that when the real paratroopers dropped later, the Germans would assume there were more dummies and not engage. This deception worked to draw German forces away from key areas, reducing resistance on D-Day. The other stages included noisemakers and radar chaff, all contributing to a broader deception campaign that played a crucial role in the success of the invasion. After Hitler became Chancellor in 1933, the Nazi regime then moved quickly to suppress political opposition. Following the Reichstag fire and mass arrests of communists and socialists, existing prisons were overwhelmed. Heinrich Himmler, then Munich's police chief, proposed a radical solution: a facility outside the normal judicial system to detain and re-educate political enemies indefinitely. The site chosen was a decommissioned munitions factory on the outskirts of Munich, a location that offered isolation and control. Officially, it was designed as a camp for political prisoners, but unofficially, it became a place of unimaginable cruelty, where forced labour, torture, and executions occurred regularly. By March 1933, this facility was fully operational, marking the first concentration camp established by the Nazis. Built near the Bavarian town of Dachau, from that moment on, the name Dachau would no longer be known for its history or culture. After France fell in 1940, the French fleet at Toulon remained under the control of Vichy France, a puppet state under Nazi influence. But the ships were still independent, and both the Allies and the Axis wanted them. So in November 1942, after the Allies landed in North Africa, Hitler feared the French Navy would join them. Germany launched Operation Lila, sending tanks and troops to seize the fleet before it could escape. But the French refused to let the ships fall into enemy hands. As German forces entered the harbour, crews opened sea valves, detonated charges, and set fire to their own vessels. Within hours, 77 ships, including battleships, cruisers, and submarines, were sent to the ocean floor. The Germans only managed to capture a few undamaged vessels, but they were of no use. The rest of the fleet was lost forever. The French chose destruction over compromise, and an act of defiance against the Nazis, and a final stand for their honour and independence. By May 24, 1940, German forces had pushed Allied troops back to Port of Dunkirk. In just 10 days, 3 panzer divisions had reached the Ahr Canal, only a few miles from the city. Instead of allowing the panzer divisions to strike the final blow, Hitler issued a halt order, instructing them to hold for 48 hours. Hermann Göring convinced Hitler that the Luftwaffe could destroy the stranded troops from the air, avoiding unnecessary tank losses. But this was a mistake. The Luftwaffe excelled at supporting ground forces, not precision bombing. Bad weather and heavy resistance from the RAF only made things worse. By the time Hitler had lifted the halt order on 26th of May, it was too late. Over 338,000 Allied troops escaped. The 48 hours bought by Hitler's halt order gave the Allies just enough time to carry out Operation Dynamo. Göring's miscalculation didn't just fail, it saved the British Army, and with it, the Allied effort. On the night of August 24, 1940, German bombers targeted the oil storage tanks at the Thameshaven oil refinery, located near the River Thames on the east of London. Thameshaven was a strategic target, essential for supplying fuel to Britain's war effort. This attack was part of the wider Battle of Britain, Hitler's campaign to achieve air superiority over the UK as a precursor to a possible invasion. However, due to navigational errors and the challenges of nighttime bombing, the bombs missed their intended target and instead fell over central London. This unintentional attack provoked Britain to retaliate by bombing Berlin the following night. Hitler was enraged by the British response and shifted the Luftwaffe's focus from military targets to a sustained bombing campaign against British cities, intending to break civilian morale and force Britain to surrender. This marked the beginning of the Blitz, during which over 43,000 civilians lost their lives, 2 million homes were destroyed, and more than 30. To gain access back into Europe, the Allies needed a way to overcome the formidable Atlantic Wall. Its true weakness wasn't in its construction, but in its vast size, making it impossible to defend everywhere. It was this realization that led to Operation Fortitude, a masterful deception plan designed to confuse the Germans about the invasion's true location. Fortitude was split into two parts. Fortitude South aimed to convince the Germans that the main invasion point would be at Pas-de-Calais, the shortest crossing point from England. To sell this illusion, the Allies created a fake army under General Patton, complete with inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft and falsified radio traffic. Fortitude North, meanwhile, spread disinformation about a separate invasion of Norway, tying up German forces far from the true target. The plan relied heavily on double agents, feeding false intelligence to the Germans. The strategy worked brilliantly, convincing German commanders to spread their forces thin and keep reinforcements. When the Nazi Party rose to power in Germany in 1933, their goal was to revive the struggling German economy. Adolf Hitler, as Chancellor, believed that a national network of roads, later known as the Autobahn, would boost infrastructure and create jobs. Alongside this, he envisioned a car that could be affordable for every German, symbolising the nation's economic recovery. To make this happen, Hitler turned to Ferdinand Porsche, an experienced German engineer and Nazi Party supporter. Porsche was tasked with designing a car that would be simple, reliable and cheap enough for mass production. His design was practical, focusing on the needs of ordinary Germans, and in 1938 the Nazis commissioned the building of a factory in Wolfsburg, a town planned specifically for this project. The initiative was named Volkswagen, or People's Car, and the car designed by Porsche would later become known as the iconic Volkswagen Beetle. During World War II, the Nazis needed a more secure way of communicating to protect their military strategies and troop movements. To achieve this, they developed the Enigma machine, which scrambled messages through a series of rotors and lights, creating 150 quintillion possible combinations, making it seem unbreakable. The Allies quickly caught on and began developing code-breaking efforts of their own. Polish mathematicians cracked an earlier version of the Enigma and shared their findings with the UK, giving the Allies a crucial head start. Alan Turing and his team at Bletchley Park then built the bomb, a machine designed to rapidly test thousands of combinations per second to decipher the Enigma messages. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, the daily German weather reports. These messages followed a predictable structure and often included phrases like "Hail Hitler." By exploiting these patterns, the Allies were able to crack the Enigma code, gaining vital intelligence and shortened the war by 2 to 4 years and possibly saved millions of lives. In 1943, British intelligence pulled off one of the greatest deceptions of World War II. They took the body of a homeless man who died from rat poison, dressed him as a Royal Marine, and gave him a fake identity of Captain William Martin. They planted documents on him that suggested the Allies would invade Greece and Sardinia, leaving Sicily as a decoy. The body was transported by submarine and dropped off at the coast of Spain, where it was discovered by a fisherman not long after. These documents were passed on to German intelligence, who bought the story. The Germans moved their troops to Greece and Sardinia, leaving Sicily wide open. The Allies took this opportunity and invaded Sicily with far less resistance. This operation played a huge part in turning the tide in the Mediterranean, and later became known as Operation Mincemeat.